Devlog number 26. So I had another one of those weeks where I worked on a bunch of stuff that I didn't really plan to work on, and there's not a whole lot that I can show that's obvious. This pattern seems to be getting predictable in its unpredictability. So that's just how things go. Oh, I fixed a little bug where, I don't know if it ever showed up on video, but before there was something wrong with coming to this. If the cursor defaults there, this wouldn't show up first. Anyway, little things. I did my usual fixing all the little UI bugs that I saw during the last... Ooh, I don't like that. Okay, so I guess I'm talking about this first. So, I changed a thing that had been bothering me for the longest time with the way my UI connections work. So I'm going to press gamepad down right now. That goes to encounters. Gamepad up goes back to number 1. Gamepad right, gamepad down, gamepad up. So since this is a special kind of thing that manages its cursor one way, it remembers the horizontal position that the cursor was last at. I extended that pattern to my entire UI. So quick little summary of how this whole system works, like how it knows that when I press gamepad down, I go from this element to this one, or how when I press here, it goes to this one, or to this button, down goes to this button. I have you can do tab, shift tab to go forward and back if you want to. Oh no, I can't tab to my map view. Okay, well, I barely ever use the tabbing behavior, but okay, that is a slight bug. So all of those connections are made manually. I just have a big block of code somewhere. Here, let's actually look at it. What do I have here? Okay, that's audio stuff. Let's get to that. Here, give me actual code. Encounter setup screen. This is not encounter setup screen. That file has a lot of includes. This is map screen, right? Open with Sublime Text. By the way, I finally did something about my near invisible cursor. So by default, Sublime Text shows Windows shows a 1 pixel wide inverting cursor. So I can see it because it inverts on the screen, but OBS captures it with non-inverting behavior. So I just replaced the system cursor with one with a white outline. So you can actually see where I'm pointing in text files now. I should have done this long, long ago. I don't know why I didn't. This file also has a lot of includes. Anyway, so if I think I changed my zoom. What do I like? Something around there, I think. Let's search for UI element connect. Yeah, okay. So this is how the connections of things on that screen are set up. Well, I can't really look at both at once. I kind of can, but not really. So the encounters button to the right connects to the collection button. Encounters, collection. So from here, if I go right, I go to collection. And if I go left, I go back to encounters. This parameter specifies whether it's a bidirectional connection. If that's false, then going left from the collection button would not connect to encounters necessarily. Behavior like that is necessary when I have situations like this, where I have the challenges button. Yeah, so challenges button connects to the left to encounters button without a bidirectional connection. Because by default, if I'm on encounters and I steer right, I want to go here. But if I steer left from either of these, they should connect to encounters. So that's one step. And yeah, this is all set up manually. I don't love it, but I went through a lot of ideas for how to do this that didn't require this block of code for literally every UI connection and did not come up with one that was satisfactory. So yeah, there's a lot of potential for bugs to sneak in. Like, for example, this tabbing behavior here. Yeah, so tab is UI next and UI previous. Left, right, up, down are the spatial directions, as you can tell by the names. So the thing that was bothering me so much was that I just had static... the concept of connections between things didn't really adapt to... how would I describe this? I was unsatisfied with the behavior that if I were pointing at challenges here, and I steered left, I'd go to encounters, and then if I steered right, I would go back to collection, so just the default thing. So I would sort of lose the information of where I was in this column when I go to this column. But I changed the thing. If I steer right now, it goes back to challenges. If I go to collection, left, right, now it's collection. Back in mechanics have their own connection because it's one-to-one on this row. But again, this is all set up manually. So basically just whenever I leave focus on a UI element in one direction and come back, it remembers the last used connection and traverses back to that location. However, this view works a little differently, and I need to do some special handling to make this work that way. So if I go down and then up, it should go back to 4. Anyway, but for the rest of the UI, this all works much nicer, and I'm happier with it. So that's that change. There was some stuff that was kind of in progress here on the battle screen that's working a little better now. What do I have input for your commands? Your action is use fire on all enemies. That'll do just fine. Your actions are, they include using a potion on yourself. Okay, so I can show off all the things I'm going to show here. So I had redone this view, and there was a problem with gauge animation when I'm targeting multiple things, that it wouldn't actually play properly. So I fixed that up, and also took a suggestion that I liked a whole lot, which was to draw a change in this in a different color in the region that's changing. So check this out. That's a huge improvement there. So that part turns red when it's going down. That red color, by the way, if you're curious, why is this open? Because I was messing with my cursor. So I got this I-beam cursor to work this way, but Windows forgets it every startup. I haven't figured out how to get it to actually start up in like this UI theme. Anyway, that is completely unrelated to game development. That's just general computer usage. And me not actually knowing what I'm doing a lot of the time. I just know how to use a computer well enough to write a game on it. Anything beyond that is beyond me. So, what was I looking at? I wanted this piece of source code here. Yeah, not source code. I wanted a scenario file. So the color for, oh boy, how will I find this? By scrolling slowly. Abilities, items, how about resources? That's what I want. Equipment, tiles. As champions, how about resources? Well, they're further down, I guess. Elements, statuses. Really? Fine, I'll search. I don't like to search. I prefer browsing whenever I possibly can. Okay, so health resource has color, and it has deplete color and restore color. This may be more customization than is strictly necessary, but right now I've decided that I want to be able to specify exactly what color is going to show up when this is going down and what color will show up when it's going up. So let's see some other colors. So Mage is going to cast fire on 2 imps. So this energy gauge will go down. Looks like I chose the same red color for that, but I could make that a totally different color than the red that depletes this. Okay, so this imp's health is going to go down eventually. All right, then we're going to switch to the view of the other imp. Okay, so I can't roll over this and see its own preview up here. I think that's correct. Yeah, I think that's correct. If you want to look at... What I should have is some indicator that this corresponds to this. Since I really need to redo this target indicator here, it should be... I should do something more than just have it in a different color. First of all, these like 7 pixels here should be much, much larger and more obvious. And second, I should have maybe like a little line drawn from here to here or something that would move from here to here when that's the active one, or a different floor highlight for the one that's showing up here. Okay, and that's something I definitely need to do. Anyway, when I press the button, this is going to go... let's see, I clicked, so I'll press the button and the menu cursor will show up there. Here. Okay, right. That's fine. So this view will swap to the representation of this imp, and its health will go down. And it animates. So it looks like something. It's not 100% finished, but it's better than it was. Right, so imp, direction of action is this. Imp is attacking warrior. Warrior gets the same red animation. Other imp attacks warrior. So now warrior, I did do something about this. So instead of just pointing outward at nothing, I have an arrow returning to a champion who's acting on themselves. So warriors using potion on self. And that'll show the restore color. Like that. And it looks great. Alright, so that stuff's all done. And I think that covers all the visible changes. No, there's one more. Like I said, I don't have a lot of showy stuff done. No, there are two more. And the second one's pretty significant. All right, I got some stuff done. Anyway, we don't need to play out that battle. Seen it dozens of times now. I added an item to this collection menu. I've wanted this for a while, but there's now a bestiary, so I can see all of the... Ooh, sort of. Right now it's showing me every champion in the scenario. So if I just wanted to know, hey, what's an ooze? What does it do? What are its stats? I don't like this being crowded way over in the corner. This should go left. Maybe it should go left. Anyway, yeah, so ooze has a health max of 30, in case you're curious. Used by health, there's all your formulas and stuff, sure. It has those abilities. Okay, giant has a health max of 30, etc. It starts at 30 health by default. Anyway, but that's supposed to only show champions that I've actually seen. These are new, so I've never seen the ooze, which resides only in Puzzle 2. And actually, I guess I've never seen the giant in the save file, which resides only in Encounter 4 and Puzzle 1. But I believe in preferences I do have true complete information checked. So if that goes away, then the bestiary now shows... Oh dear! Completely the wrong stuff. What? Whoa. That's fascinating. Why does that happen? Whoa, this broke in a completely unexpected way. What? How? Huh, also the order in the scenario is Warrior Imp Mage, not Warrior Mage Imp. Huh. I guess it just goes by, I probably, in my test scenario, have... Oh boy, okay, there's going to be a bunch of these. That's probably just how it's specified. Yeah, Warrior, Imp, Mage. Okay, sure. So that was basically the order that I created those. I'll probably need to include a way to reorder them in the editor when I get there, just in case somebody has a strong preference for the order they show up in the bestiary. Or maybe I should alphabetize this or something. Anyway, so got some bizarre bug. I mean, it did technically only show me ones that I'd seen. But why the 2 extra imps? That's really weird. Okay, well, it works. It just works weird. I wonder if it's seeing like each individual instance of imp that I've spotted, that I've run into. Like these 3 in here? That shouldn't be. All right, well, I'll have fun debugging that one. Anyway, so that just sort of fell out of, like having a list view for this was convenient due to another thing that I've been working on. So I've been kind of in scenario editor land for a little while. Right, the editor button is gone now. You just go to it from here and edit, and it takes you to this screen. This is kind of a temporary layout. I just wanted to lay something down and see what it would look like and where I need to go from there. So small iterative steps. So we got the scenario name up here, a bunch of buttons for examining things that are in the scenario. So here's an encounter list, champion list, stat list, resource list, equipment slots, equipment, abilities, items, spells, status effects. A bunch of status effects you don't actually see that are unused in my test scenario, but you can see them here. Except you can't because none of this is wired up. I got as far as opening the lists of things with the icons and the new spell, etc., new item button, but they don't do anything yet. This was a surprising amount of work, and as straightforward as it looks, there were actually a lot of little decisions that went into all of this. So yeah, it's not very showy, but a lot of foundational work has happened to make this possible. Challenges list map goes nowhere yet. That one's much more complicated, so a map editor is going to require something more than just a list view. The idea would be that you'd go into one of these lists, and if you press the new button, you'd get, like, say, a name prompt. So new resource type. All right, I'd type in, I don't know, what even is a third resource? Stamina or something. And then I could assign its... What would I assign? What goes into a resource type? I'd have an editing interface for all of these fields, basically. So yeah, you could type a different name. If you really wanted to, you could probably change the identifier. I do need to expose that in some way. Choose an icon from a panel of icons, import your own icon. So I'll need some kind of, probably not as far as image editor, at least not right now, but like image list manager of sorts. So you can assign whether this looks like a heart or a star or something else you want to specify. Default state, if it's vital or not, how you spend it, how it changes. Oh. So the idea that I'm going to need a formula editor just hit me. That's a big one. Yeah, I may have underestimated the scope of a scenario editor a little bit. I mean, it's obvious it's going to be a large thing, but no matter how large I estimate, I'm going to forget stuff and estimate low. That's just how these things work. Anyway, so I'll need a formula editor, sure. Color picker's easy. 3 color pickers. Choose sounds from a list. Import your own if you want to. Visual effects. So I do have visual effects listed here. Right, yeah, so map editor is a little more complicated than list view. Lore, tiles, visual effects. So these 3 icons are new. There's the shine effect, the swish effect, and the particle effect, with all different parameters for how they work. And I decided to just put since each one has a color, I put the color of what it was in the icon, and I think it looks nice. So I need a visual effect editor. These don't have human readable names, so you just see the machine readable identifiers there. That's why those look a little different. Starting inventory. Mechanics is stuff like move and speed formula. By the way, another little bit of information completeness change here. I did not previously have the move formula showing in the mechanics menu. Looks great! Fits on screen perfectly! Yeah, that's so good. Okay, so got some problems with showing this, but it's there at least. Even if it looks terrible. This one looks okay, kinda. Better than that, at least. Anyway, yeah, so then these are just the elemental resistance formulas. Yeah. So that's as far as I've gotten with scenario editor. And scenario info would just be, right, so that button does nothing currently, but what it would be is an editor for author name, scenario identifier, scenario name, and any other metadata that it's just about the scenario itself. I'll probably have scenarios have their own icons, since everything else in the game does. Be nice to have a visual distinction between similarly named things. And that's probably also where I would manage stuff like the scenario's own atlas of icons and things, sound assets, etc. Or maybe I'll have a separate asset editor. So there's all this room on the right here, because what I want to put here is a kind of like a list of almost like compiler warnings. Analysis of what's missing in the scenario. So say you would make a new scenario. Hey, I don't have to say, I can actually do that. New scenario entitled, whoa, okay. New scenario is called single quotes because I fat fingered the return key. That's fine. Test scenario? That's not who I'm editing. What are you doing, game? I disagree. Oh, I probably just don't update the text in this text field element here. Like if I go to the map test scenario, yeah, it still just says test scenario. Okay, so everything is fine. It's just that specific UI element doesn't get its text replaced. That's all. So yeah, no encounters, no champions, no stat types, no resource types, etc. So this hypothetical compiler warning display equivalent would say things like, there are no encounters in this scenario. You're going to need to add at least one of those. There are no maps in this scenario. You need at least one. And even more advanced stuff like, none of the encounters you've added actually award the scenario complete reward, so this scenario is uncompletable. Or stuff like, hey, you've defined a visual effect here that nobody actually uses, so maybe you should use that somewhere or remove it, or just leave it if you want to, but you should know that there's something unused here. So stuff like that. It can almost function like an automatically generated to-do list. Like you make a new scenario and you know, okay, well, this is the first thing that I need to do to start building this out, etc. I'll probably have some kind of templating in here so you don't have to just be up against the brick wall of completely empty scenario. What do I even define first? I guess you'd start with a resource type. and stat types. Equipment slots if you want. Then champions that reference those stats and resources. You'd need abilities too, sure. And you need at least one element type. No, strictly speaking, you don't. Everything could be non-elemental if you wanted. Properties are optional. Challenges are optional. Map is not. You need at least one map to show where things are, and at least one encounter to actually get into the game part of the game. Lore is optional. You need at least one tile to put on the battlefield. Visual effects are optional. Starting inventory technically doesn't have to have anything in it. You could do an itemless scenario if you wanted to. Oh, and mechanics, right. You'll need a speed formula and a move formula. Yeah, okay. So all of that stuff. Yeah, scenario editor is going to take a while, but I think it's going to be worth it, both for my own efforts and for other people making scenarios for this game. Hopefully that ever happens. I hope I'm not the only one who ever makes a scenario for this game, but I think if I make the puzzle mechanics interesting enough, and there are people who play this game, that's a big assumption, but there could be, then at least some of them will probably want to build their own stuff, and if I make the scenario editor nice, that'll probably actually happen. Just the dream here is to be able to have people who are interested in making levels for my own game so that I can let's play my own game. That's what I want. And be surprised by stuff that I didn't build myself. Anyway, oh, right, single quotes. That's the scenario name I'm playing. What happens if I go here? I see no map. There's nothing in the encounters list. It all works fine. Yeah, so some of the behind-the-scenes work is stuff like, for example, making sure this displays no lore in gray instead of just that broken zero-size pop-up that you've seen a couple of times. How's the bestiary work? No champions seen, because there aren't any. No champions available. Speed formula 0. Move formula 0. Okay, so yeah, when you create it, it just by default says everyone's speed is 0. That's going to break things because the minimum speed is 1. I might clamp that to 1 or more in any place that reads the formula output. I probably do. I might. I don't know if I do. I should test that at some point. Anyway, yeah, so a lot of behind-the-scenes work, a lot of stuff that's invisible. But one of the reasons for that, other than that the scenario editor is complicated, I can actually quit this now. I'm done showing the game, because I'm going to show something else. So I'm going down a rabbit hole right now. My way of creating audio assets for this game has been unsatisfying for a while, and I decided to finally do something about that. So I have in here a bunch of BFXer sound files. BFXer sound is BFXer is a derivative of, this is just a bunch of hex data here. Oh, master volume, check it out. That's in there. No, this one's text. Wait, hold on. This one is text. At least one of these was binary. Why are they different? Which one was, this one's text. Oh, I know I opened one of these a moment ago and it was in binary. Okay, this has a few different things mixed together. Anyway, so if you're familiar with SFXer, BFXer is a derivative of it. I don't actually have it on this computer. This is one of the reasons this bothers me, because I make all my sounds on my Mac that I use primarily. Haven't actually taken the time to switch to my Linux laptop yet. That's a lot of work. It'll happen someday, but I have a lot of momentum in the old Mac laptop that I use and hate every single day, but I'll get there eventually. Anyway, so I don't like that I use a tool for this that potentially requires a specific platform to run it on and is external to my build process. All of the sounds except for the padlock sound are synthesized with BFXer. And padlock sound is an actual recording. So I have Audacity open here so I can do some stuff with WAV files. So this is what the padlock sound sounded like in real time Well, there's something I just learned. Audacity's not too good at doing two things at once, as it turns out. So I have it recording my microphone audio here, but as soon as I played that, it didn't crash immediately. It let me keep talking for like 10 minutes and then didn't record any of that audio and then eventually crashed. Okay, let's try this again. So since Audacity is only up to single tasking and absolutely refuses to open a second instance of itself, I found another audio editor. So let's do it in this one. All right, so what did I just say? Something padlock sound. Okay, yeah, so this is my raw recording of a padlock. That's what it sounds like. It's a small padlock. Not too dramatic. So in order to make that final sound that you hear in the game, let's go over to it. Resources, audio. Right. Padlock open. Let's play this with VLC. Involve a third program here. So that's what it sounds like in the game. Right, all of my my actual audio resources that go into the game are OGG files. So it is, the way I processed this was a manual process that I don't really like. Let's see, in WavePad, this is speed and pitch change. So the first thing that happens to it is I slow it down to 25%. Right, and you play from your previous cursor position, so go back there. So now this sounds like kind of close to what this is. But you notice this one's a lot more satisfying, it's a bunch bassier, so I slowed it down to 25%, trimmed it a bit, did some equalization on it that I'm not going to attempt to reproduce here. That's the thing, though. That's not an easily repeatable process because there are a lot of manual steps. It involves a piece of software that's not this one. And I don't actually even know how that piece of software works, how it does its equalization and stuff. So this bothered me. That's not exactly a destructive process, but it's a non-repeatable process. What I would really like to have is for audio data, at least as far as the parts, well, actually, yeah, all of it. Yeah, so my ideal here is that audio data in my version control repository would be stored similarly to how image data is. So here in assets, I have all these BFXer sounds, which are just tiny little descriptions of how, okay, this one's in binary, I knew they existed, of how that synthesizer converts this into a waveform. And in addition to that, if I have any actual, you go away, you're not involved here. If I have any actual recorded samples, then I would have the raw, unedited sample there, like this one. This one's actually edited a little bit. It's trimmed down. I recorded like opening this padlock several times to get a good take, but this was the good take that I kept. That part's okay. I'm okay with throwing away the bad takes. But anyway, so the ideal would be that as part of my build process, I would just take these files rather than having to actually put Vorbis files into Vorbis is the audio codec, OGG is the container, by the way, in case you didn't know. OGG files with Vorbis data in them into version control. I'd like all of these to be derived data, and derived in a repeatable automatic way, just like what I do for my texture atlas. So like here I have stuff like, you know, icon byte. Well, we haven't actually seen that. You know what? No, I'm not going to open that. It's not really a spoiler for something that I expect to ever be spoilable, but let's stick with something we know. So icon fire. Let's open another application. So icon fire is this little 15 by 15 thing that looks like that and needs to be put into a texture atlas. We've looked at this plenty of times. But yeah, I'm very happy with my automated tool for doing this. I wrote the texture packer that makes this file out of, let's see, last time I tried to do this, it didn't work, right? Right, yes, okay. It did something weird that I don't want. So I have to open with this thing. And then it opens a new tab. Okay, right, yeah, so this is the texture atlas for a test scenario. So it has all the large champion icons in it and the The smaller ones all packed together. So anyway, I wanted to apply that principle to audio. So what I wanted was a thing that could pre-process, just perform the synthesis based on the parameters established in my BFXer files. Turns out SFXer is open source and very easy to use, permissive license. So I'm just going to be able to take that synthesizer and put it into a program that I can incorporate into my build process, and be able to just take this spec file, create a wave file from it, or well, I guess an OGG file actually, and put that into my build directory as an intermediate, and not have to store the actual encoded audio inversion control. It's not a storage space issue, it's just a sort of a data integrity issue. It just, since this is derived data, it should be treated as derived data and only exist on the computer that's actually building the software. But there's also the matter of repeatability for anything that processes actual sampled audio, with like the padlock is the only example currently. So I've been working on this little utility of mine. I'm calling it Audio Lab, which can read these files called audio recipes, which specify stuff like I want to create an output file which has 2 channels, is 16-bit, 2 bytes per sample, 44 kilohertz, and I want to construct it of these building blocks. So I'm going to mix in test.wave, this file here on the desktop. Whoops. Yes, Windows Media Player. Yes, do that. Is it because I installed WavePad? It's unsure. Okay, anyway, so I think that's like my clear encounter setup sound or something. That's just what I was using for testing. So I have a whole bunch of commands in here because this file just has all of my, all the things I've implemented in Audio Lab so far. It doesn't have a graphical UI yet, but I can invoke this. Here are all the ones I did when my recording wasn't actually recording. This will write out test mix1.wave to the desktop. And WavePad, hopefully you won't crash the way Audacity did. Hopefully you won't crash Audacity. Shouldn't be able to do that, ideally. Oh. Alright, so this is just the way that WavePad shows this, but why? Is this... So this is a 2-channel audio file, it's just not showing me the 2 channels separately. Alright, that's fine. Let's just take it on faith that that's a 2-channel audio file. Anyway, let's enable some of these. So this will mix the same file again at a different offset and length. So it will now have a louder portion at the start. I don't know why it has this weird like ramp down looking thing. I think I might have a bug here because there was no attack envelope on the source audio. So something weird's happening here. This is very much work in progress. But yeah, let's do a few other things. So I can amplify the sound, I can normalize a portion of it, I can stretch it a little bit, I can stretch it a different way. Yeah, okay, so this is going to actually shrink it. Using integer math here because I don't like floating point math. Because it varies, it has different output depending on the platform. Ideally, I would want the output of this tool to be byte identical anywhere that it's run. But I have to do some things with floating point numbers in here, so I don't think that's going to end up being possible. So I'll just have to accept very small differences in output depending on which platform you build this game on. Which platform I build this game on. So anyway, it sounds like that. Now this portion was amplified, this portion was normalized to 100%. It got squished down, so it's a little slower now. I think I also have this stretching... Yeah, so stretch by 1/2, stretch by 4/1, so this will now double the length if I do this, right? Oops. Yeah, there we go. All right, let's just layer on all the effects that I implemented. I generate a tone, I de-amplify it, I insert some silence, I insert some noise, I reverse the entire thing, I delete a portion of it, and I fade it. So, little test bed that I have here can do all these things. Okay, well there was a tiny bit of noise in there, it got faded out mostly. Anyway, so all that to say, I have this cool little tool that can go from this to this and do lots more stuff just based on a specification file. So yeah, this is the audio equivalent of Texture Packer. So ideally, I would have, say, a recipe file that would take, I'm not quite where I need to be with it to actually do this yet, but I'm getting there. It would specify to take padlock open raw as its input, stretch it to 400% of the length, apply an equalizer on it. That's complicated. I'm doing a deep dive into digital signal processing, learning about Fourier transforms, stuff like that. There's a lot to it. The basics here weren't too hard to implement, but getting to the advanced stuff is getting into some trickier territory, but I'll get there. Anyway, yeah, so it would do all that, mix in the BFXer sound, which it would synthesize itself. Yeah, so I just include the SFXer synth function into Audiolab, and that should be no problem, ideally. Yeah, and then I would have my my data non-destructively, repeatably generated here, and I expect to have a lot more audio sound effects that are made this way. I'm not satisfied with SFXer synthesis for every piece of audio in the entire game. A lot of these are placeholdery. Some of them will probably stick around, but not all of them. Anyway, yeah, so just taking full control over my audio asset pipeline, and I'm going to be real happy with that when it's all working. Yeah, so I'd love this thing to have its own UI, so I could just, like, show the waveform there in that UI, and maybe, like, check boxes for enables on parts of this recipe instead of having to do it this way. I'm kind of treating this as a side project, but it's also being done as a build tool that I want to use with Foresight Fight. So the rule that I'm following is I must spend half an hour per day on Foresight Fight, which is my usual rule, but that does not include work on Audiolab, so I'm just trying to find some extra time to put this thing together to help me along. And it's coming along, it's fun, I'm learning lots of new stuff, but yeah, that's kind of... It did kind of end up taking time away from the game, because like the extra time I spent on this could have been spent on getting my scenario editor going, but I think this is important, so I'm going to continue doing some stuff with that. But scenario editor will continue moving forward relentlessly until it's ready for what it needs to be. All right, this was kind of messy, but that's what happened. I'll see you next time.